Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Conversations with GRX. My name is Jake Goldstein,
And I'm Jared Catini.
and this is episode 5. And today we're talking about something that's honestly been coming up in almost every conversation that we have lately, which is AI. And not in the way that people throw it around online, but how it's actually impacting practices right now. So we're going to talk about what's working, what's not working, and we're going to see where practices are either pulling ahead or falling behind.
Yeah. And I feel like this is one of those topics where everyone thinks they understand it, but when you actually look at how it's being used inside of a practice, usually what we see it's pretty surface level.
Yeah, 100%. And that's actually a good place to start. So when you think about the practices we're talking to every day, Jared, what do you feel like they think AI is versus what it actually is?
Yeah. I think most practices look at AI as like a convenience tool, something that helps them write captions, maybe respond to messages a little bit faster, but they're not thinking about it as something that can actually drive revenue.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think that's the disconnect because the way we look at it is isn't just a tool, it's infrastructure. Like it should be built into how your practice actually operates.
And let me ask you this. When you say infrastructure, what does that actually look like in a real practice? Because I feel like that's where some people could get lost with that terminology.
Yeah, yeah, that's actually a good question, Jared. I think for us, it starts with patient acquisition. Like the moment someone raises their hand, fills out a form, sends a DM, clicks an ad, AI is going to immediately step in, right? It's going to respond instantly, asking questions, qualifying them, and guiding them toward booking. And then to take it a step further, it's going to actually book that appointment directly into their calendar without a single human touch point or human involvement.
So tell me this. You're saying it's not as basic as AI saying, "Hey, we got your info." It's an actual conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the difference right there because most practices, like what are they doing right now, right? I think they're either waiting 10, 15, 30 minutes to respond. I think I spoke to a practice the other day on a sales call and they said that they get back to them in 24 hours, right? So it's either that time frame or they're following up manually when they get a chance.
And realistically, every practice is busy, or at least they should be busy. They've got patients in front of them, phones are ringing. They can't always just drop everything to respond to new leads, people reaching out through Instagram, people filling out forms online on their website. There's so many things happening on a daily basis.
Right. So let me ask you this. This leads to a really good point here, Jared. Based on what you just said, so let me ask you, how important do you think speed actually is here? Because we talk about it a lot. We can't stress it enough to our clients. So how important do you think speed actually is here in this conversation?
When you're talking about converting leads into patients, it's everything. Like if you're not responding within 30 to 60 seconds max, you're most likely losing a significant portion of leads. And not because there's just people who aren't interested, but because someone else is responding faster than you are. Because when these patients reach out, many times they're reaching out to multiple providers, multiple practices, and the one who gets back fast has a higher likelihood of actually winning that patient, getting that consultation scheduled.
Exactly. No, that makes total sense. I mean, we preach that every single day, and I think that's where AI just completely changes the game for these clinics that we work with because now you can have that instant response every single time without fail, right? It doesn't matter if you're getting 10 leads in a week, 400 leads in a week. It's going to respond without fail every single time at scale.
Yeah. And I think something else that's important is it's not just about responding quickly, it's about what happens after that.
So that leads me to my next point. So let me ask you this, Jared. What do you think most practices are doing wrong after that initial response?
I'd say not progressing the conversation forward. They answer a question, maybe send a link to a calendar so that person can schedule a consultation, but they're not actually guiding that person towards scheduling.
Okay. And do you think so? That's where we really dial things in, right? So, because for us, every single conversation has a goal, right? So, that's to qualify the patient, get them comfortable, and get them booked.
Yeah. And that's really where systems come into play because AI by itself isn't the solution. It's AI inside of a structured process.
100%. And I think that's where a lot of people mess up. They try to plug AI into something that's already broken, right? And then they're like, oh, it doesn't work or I can't figure it out. And they kind of give up.
Yeah, AI doesn't fix bad systems, it just amplifies it.
Exactly. So let's talk about how we're actually using it, like at a high level across the practices that we currently work with. Can you dive into that a little bit, Jared?
Yeah. So at a high level, we're using AI to handle front end patient communication. So, every lead that comes in, every call that comes in after hours, it's really acting as that core layer. So they're getting immediate follow up. Questions are getting answered and they're being guided consistently towards booking.
Yeah. So, and then on top of that, I think what we're doing is we're layering human support too, right? Because once someone gets closer to booking or has more specific questions, that's where our patient coordinators step in.
Yeah, or really, whether it's our patient coordinator or if you have an existing patient coordinator, this is not about replacing people or replacing staff. It's about making them more efficient. So, one staff member who is maybe able to manage, 50 new leads on a weekly basis can now manage 10 times that because they're leveraging AI for more efficiency.
Yeah, so just kind of expanding on that, basically how the process works is if we are using someone in-house at your practice or our own internal patient coordinators at Growth RX, and let's just say a lead has more questions beyond what the AI can handle, which is very rare because the AI is customizable. It's 100% trained on your business. Let's say a credit card needs to be collected or they have specific questions about, the procedure or the services that they're coming in for. Once the AI gets them to the point of being ready to book, it's just going to hand that lead off to your patient coordinator, your front desk staff, or our patient coordinator to kind of get them from that 99-yard line to the touchdown. And I think kind of expanding on that, this is a big point because I think some practices hear AI and they think that, you know, they need to replace their team, right? That's not exactly what this is.
Yeah, it's more like your team can now focus on higher value conversations and higher leverage activities within your business instead of simply chasing leads all day, some of which probably are not ready to move forward, which is to be expected. But it's really just about giving them more leverage within their current day to day responsibilities.
Exactly. Yeah, you couldn't have said that any better. So let me ask you this, Jared. What are you seeing right now from the practices that are actually doing this really well? Like the ones that are really leaning into AI?
Yeah, they're the early adopters. They're the people who are accepting that we're at the very early stage of this technology. They're leaning into it. They're experimenting with it and they're testing things. And they're consistent. I would say that's really the biggest thing. Every lead gets followed up with, every conversation is intentional, and really they're not letting anything fall through the cracks.
Yeah, and I think the results reflect that. Like we're seeing clinics where, some of our clients are allowing AI to book, anywhere from 8 to 20 appointments a week directly into their calendar. I think we were talking to Dr. Pellegrino last week, right? And he said that the AI agent that we were running for him was running about 8 to 10 appointments directly into his calendar a week. So, I mean, that's kind of what we're seeing with our current clients leveraging AI at a high level.
And just for anyone out there listening, that whole process, like that example that Jake just gave you with Dr. Pellegrino, that's what he's talking about is an entire patient acquisition system infrastructure that's been built for Dr. Pellegrino that is booking these appointments with new patients without single human touch point, all the way from leads being generated from ad campaigns to qualifying these individuals, answering their questions, letting them know what the process is going to look like after that initial consultation without a single actual human jumping in to do any of that work. That's all being done with AI, which is crazy.
It is crazy. I mean, we do this every day, and not a day goes by where I'm not like, wow, what our AI system's doing for these clinics is not just insane, right? And I think a lot for these practices is that's where it clicks, right? Because now it's not theoretical anymore. Like they're actually seeing it in real time and it's working for them.
Yeah, and this is happening right now.
Exactly. So let's flip it because there's a whole other side to this right now, Jared. What are the practices that are not using AI doing right now?
So those practices, they're still relying on manual follow-up. So basically, their patient coordinator is sitting at the desk all day and hopefully, they get a notification when a new lead comes in. Sometimes they don't even get a notification, so they have no idea that the business just got a new lead. And they're expected just to call them from the office phone, maybe send a manual email, maybe send a manual text message to that individual. But ultimately, what we're finding in our conversations with practice owners is it really just comes down to inconsistent systems. And honestly, it's just a lot of guesswork and hoping and relying on your staff to do the things that are necessary to take a lead and convert that into a new patient.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jared. And I think where things start to break, I think what you just said is exactly where we're seeing things start to break because even if your marketing is working, if your back end isn't tight, isn't structured, you're just leaking opportunities and that's costing you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars every month because of it.
I think this is a big misconception. A lot of practices think they need more leads, but I'll give an example. We were talking to a practice owner the other day. He was getting about 200 leads a month, and less than 10% of those leads were actually turning into new consultations for his business. And when you think about those types of numbers and you're tracking your conversion rates, which I hope everyone out there who's listening to this, I hope you're tracking your numbers in terms of your sales process, your lead conversion rates, your appointments conversion rates, all of those things. A lot of times it's just about being more efficient with what you're already getting. It's not always about spending more money on marketing, getting more leads. It's just about making your systems tighter and, like Jake was saying, really your back end tighter.
Yeah, because I think in reality, they just need better systems. So, Jared, I mean, if someone's listening to this and they're like, okay, this makes a lot of sense, where should they even start? Because I know a lot of this can seem very intimidating for those that haven't adopted AI yet. So, like, just break that down for them. Where could they even start if they think this makes sense and they want to get started with something like what we're talking about?
Yeah, really the first step is just auditing your current processes. And when you work with Growth RX, we obviously have a lot of different ways that we integrate AI into your business to make processes more efficient, to give you more leverage within your business. But let's just talk about from a patient acquisition standpoint. So the first step would be to audit your current processes. I want you to look at today when you get a new lead, what is the first thing that happens? Who's responsible for those systems happening inside your business right now? And then ask yourself, how can those processes be automated? So, for example, let's say your current process right now is when you get a new lead, your patient coordinator is expected to send an email and make an outbound phone call to that person who submitted their information. Think about all the touch points that happen in between you when you get a new lead and when that person actually schedules and shows up for a consultation. Just audit that process and just see what it looks like.
Yeah, like actually audit it though, because most people haven't even done that. Like when we talk to practices, they're like, what do you even mean by that? Like they just don't even know where to start with that. So make sure like you truly audit, like Jared just mentioned, your entire system from the front end to the back end.
Exactly. And then from there, figure out where AI can support that process. And if you're not even sure how to think about that, then you'd be, a perfect person to have a call with us because we can kind of understand your processes, figure out what they look like, and then offer suggestions to you on how and where you can start leveraging AI.
Yeah, Jared, you said something very, very important here. You said not replace it, but support it, right? Nothing that we're going to do is going to be replacing, the human involvement aspect. Like it'll be supporting it, if anything. So we're not replacing your system. We're just helping support and make it more efficient.
And most importantly, predictable, right? Because if you are a practice owner out there right now who, lead follow up does rely on somebody internal to actually send these message manually, you're relying on that person and you're expecting that person to be consistent. And, we're all human. It's hard to be that consistent at scale, depending on how many leads and opportunities you're generating every month. So most importantly here is the predictability side of things.
Exactly. And I think once that's in place, everything is going to start to compound. And you're going to be surprised by this, right? You're going to start to see more conversions. You're going to start to see more bookings. You're going to see better show rates. And most importantly, you're going to see more revenue, right? So ultimately, if you're a practice and you're trying to figure out actually how to implement this the right way, that's exactly what we do at Growth RX. We'll break down your current systems, show you where things are breaking. And then what we're going to do is we're going to map out what this could look like for your practice.
Yeah. And what I also want to mention is, we're talking about how to use AI specifically in the patient acquisition process. But what's important to note here is there's a lot of other ways to use AI and other ways that we use AI when we implement them inside our client's business. For example, especially as local businesses, Google reviews are the most important thing, and referrals are probably one of the best forms of marketing. And so we have other ways of implementing AI when it comes to Google reviews, when it comes to generating referrals for your practice, when it comes to answering calls outside of working hours. Like those are really hot opportunities. So I just want everyone to know that even outside of patient acquisition, there's still a lot of ways that you can be leveraging AI to be more profitable and to make your systems more efficient.
Absolutely. Well, I think that wraps it up for us. I mean, this was a great conversation. Guys, if you want to work with us, you want to learn more, you know where to find us. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode. Peace.
See you in the next episode.